Policing Task Force. Among the most significant, release of body cam video within 30 days of an officer-involved shooting, and the complete reconfiguration of the Police Oversight Board with the addition of independent investigators. Also notable, a police transparency website with a portal for online complaints against officers, 18 additional crisis intervention teams for the mentally ill, implementation of cite and release for most minor offenses, and officer training to eliminate implicit bias.
And someone who grew up in this city, someone who has grown up, for example, in communities that have been underserved, yeah, this is a very, very important moment.
If a chief of police or police officers can't listen and hear the citizens and feel their hearts, we're not going to be successful.
The NAACP and even the Houston Police Officers Union voiced support for Turner's reforms. Question, will it be enough to at least begin mending the rift between police and a significant portion of the public they serve? I start with Charles Blaine.
Yeah, I think it's a solid start. Listen, I was critical last week because for all the lip service elected officials give to this being the hometown of George Floyd, they hadn't delivered. But I think this is a great start. But I really want to make sure we give credit to the folks who were behind this. I mean, I know we had the police commission created a year ago and all of that, but really this was the push from council members Edward Pollard, Tiffany Thomas, Martha Castex-Tatum, Carolyn Evans-Shabazz, and former council member Jerry Davis. But for them, I don't think we'd be seeing these reforms today. And one of the ones that I think we should also mention is the removal of credit score consideration from new hires for HPD, which I think is incredibly important, is going to help diversify the pool of candidates that are accepted into the department. So I think it's a great start, and I'm looking forward to this coming before council.
Okay, Ms. Tamara Bell, you've been watching this process closely. What's your take?
Yeah, I'm glad to see them make a step. I really am. As someone who's been working and hoping that we would get to the point where we could have a citizens review committee along with subpoena power. That's what I was hoping for. We haven't gotten there yet, and I hope we get there. I know when they formed this oversight committee, I know they were trying to make sure that they were engaged and it was diverse and they included people, but just some of the general citizens who lead their communities who are out there and who've been involved, I would think that really would help if they had more people like that, because one of the things that Chief Lee Brown did so successfully when he was police was community policing. And I'm hoping with new Chief Troy Finner, we get back to that, because that is the only way it's going to work, is a great public-private partnership between the police and the people that they protect.
Chal, policing is a big part of what you do, trying to get protection to women. And I know as a journalist, you covered this department. What's your take on this slate of reforms?
Like, you're right, it is a big part, because women and families who call the police, typically in our work, just want the violence to stop. And that mistrust begins when they're not treated well, when police officers show up without care and concern, or are not trauma-informed or client-centered, as we call it in our communities. Look, police reform here stopped short of talking about defunding the police. You know, that language did not hit our communities. In the city of Houston, we are talking about what Tamara said, relational policing. We have got to get the community and our police officers, who are trying to do good work by and large, to work together. So I think this is a step in the right direction. I'm really excited about seeing an oversight committee put together by the mayor and appointed by the city council members to really touch on that community policing and relationship building, because that's what we need. We need the police to be trusted by the communities with which they work in.
Marcus, hopeful or skeptical?
Well, let me start by saying finally. And I say finally because for the last year, so after the death of George Floyd, I spent a little time on panels debating a fake piece of art posing as a police chief who decided that and announced that the police department in Houston was fine and it didn't need change and we were good where we were, and we had to wait on national policy to change it for Houston to change. Meanwhile, our department was riddled with all of the corruption that exists there. So I am excited that we have a potential substantive change in the Houston Police Department right now in the city of Houston. Now, I have to say this: if this does not address the
leadership in the department to bring in some much needed reform. And one of those that I think is pretty significant is the policy of requiring the release of body cam videos within 30 days. We saw in Columbus, Ohio, when the shooting of the 16-year-old girl who was about to stab another young girl to death in front of a police officer, we saw how releasing that video within 12 hours literally shut down and saved people from rioting and all of the other things that may have happened in that. Contrast that with Elizabeth City shooting, and where we have not seen any release of video except a 20-second clip that was shown to some of the family members, and it just festers that mistrust of what's going on within that department. So I think that's very significant.
Okay, we're going to leave it right there. Still ahead, a big new job for Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. Can he help President Biden calm the chaos on our border? And later, the price of 2.5 centuries of slavery. Are monetary reparations for Black America essential to a genuine reckoning? Guys, I'm coming to Bob first on Gonzalez. You good with that, Bob?
Sure.
I've been anxious to hear what Bob's position was on. I want to know, and I was hoping one of the attorneys would be on today, but does anybody have an understanding of why releasing the video gets cloaked under this whole idea of it can disturb the investigation? What potential harm or danger can come to an investigation by showing what actually happened?
Look, Kim Ogg said okay to this. And we've got 20 seconds. Stand by, everybody.
Okay.
Lana said it's a litigation exception to the Public Information Act that allows them to do that. In North Carolina, they've got a strange law that says only a district court judge can authorize the release of the videos. And
without question, President Joe Biden's biggest problem is the border. A hefty majority of Americans don't like his policy and fear the onslaught of illegal immigration it's allowing is both dangerous and getting worse. Enter Harris County's justifiably popular Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, tapped by Biden this week for arguably the toughest job in the nation. Head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Panel, what do you make of this development? Bob, you cover the border closely.
Well, it's a significant promotion for the sheriff, and I congratulate him on being nominated for this position. I think of all the people that Joe Biden could have picked, I'm actually pretty pleased with this pick. You know, Sheriff Gonzalez, in one of his first actions, eliminated the 287G program in the county jail that allowed officers to be trained as immigration agents. But he continued to work with ICE. You know, there was nobody that was deported before Gonzalez came in that wasn't turned over to ICE and deported after Gonzalez came in. So he understands how to work with ICE. He has significant experience in that, and he is a very reasonable and moderate, you know, for a Democrat, I think he's a good pick.
All right, Charles Blaine, what do you think of this choice?
I mean, yeah, I'm just going to kind of echo Bob's sentiments. I think that for the choices that were at hand, he's probably one of the best picks. He runs the largest sheriff's department in the state, third largest in the country, in a corridor that is heavily plagued by illegal immigration, in a county with a legal population of something about 466,000. And even you did reporting on how well he handled the jail population when it came to COVID. And we know that the migrant detention facilities have had a lot of issues dealing with COVID and how they can space kids out and the influx of immigrants and things like that. So I think he brings all the things to the table necessary to handle this situation. So again, like Bob said, for a Democrat, I think he's a great pick.
All right, tomorrow, take 20 seconds. Is that possible?
Maybe not. As one of my 7 successful candidates that I helped last year receive victory, I am so proud of him, and I'm so honored to see him get this. He is a team player, and I'm telling you, he is one of the people who I think is perfect for this because of where his heart is, being a former HPD officer and being a sheriff. I think he's really good. But that's one thing that Bob said and that Charles said and that I know personally. He is somebody who can work with anybody. He can. And that's what you need in the crisis that we're in.
Chow, 30 seconds.
You know, Ed does not shy away from those tough issues. In our work, I know Ed personally. He is a man of compassion. So finally, we get a leader into that office who has compassion and brings a touch of humanity on very difficult issues regarding immigrants. So I say more power to the sheriff. He was with us on a permitless carry news conference on the day that was announced and didn't say a peep. That's the kind of leader we need in the White House. Okay,
final word goes to Marcus Davis on this topic.
I don't know what else can be said. I think the panel described it perfectly. You know, Sheriff Ed is a stand-up guy, and I'm looking forward and hopeful for the right and the just things to be done. Echoing Bob's sentiment, the way he handled the 287G by, not honoring the legislation, but still honoring the purpose of it, I thought was a noble act. That's the only question. That's Sheriff Ed. He said what he said.
Okay, I got gifted 20 seconds real quick, Bob Price. Any problem getting through the Senate with this nomination?
No, I don't think there'll be a problem with it. He's certainly qualified for the position. He's not controversial, I don't think, in hardly any way at all. I think he'll sail right through, and I look forward to covering his actions once he gets. It's a very, very tough job, as you said, and he's going to have his hands full.
Okay, good discussion, panel. Up next, after 100 days in office, another huge spending plan from the president and a controversial pronouncement dominating the Republican response. Stay with us.
I don't think I studied up on that. What is the issue, Greg?
What is the topic?
Yeah, what's the topic?
I thought it was the state of this. Well, it's not.
Okay.
State of the,
Oh, I thought it was Biden's.
Okay, this starts with an SOT, right?
Oh, what?
well, we'll just both.
Sound on tape.
Okay.
Hey, Greg, what topic is the next topic? I don't know if I know that one. The youth.
Yeah, that's going to be Biden's call for the American Families Plan, 1.8 trillion. He's talking about free subsidized child care, free pre-K, free community college.
Yeah, that's part of his infrastructure plan, the big overarching.
Yeah, but we're pushing $6 trillion in additional spending right now. And so the price tag. And this is also Tim Scott. Y'all get to pick. Tim Scott saying America is not a racist country. So you get to pick.
I thought that's what we were doing.
Yeah, that's where it's. Yeah, we like the Tim Scott thing. I'm ready.
So that's this segment, Greg?
Yes. I'll go to you first, Marcus.
You had no time to talk.
I think Chow wanted to jump on
You
it.
go right ahead, Martin. Well, I'll tell you,
Okay, everybody gets about 45 seconds here.
Well, time.
Chow, you're still a little bit off center, by the way.
This way?
Yeah.
Okay.
30 out.
I'm in this big chair.
Yeah, you were left of center, which is probably accurate, but.
Loving the energy.
Left of center.
Okay,
How do you
starting
know
with
me so
sound.
well?
Stand by.
To win that competition for the future, in my view, we also need to make a once-in-a-generation investment in our families and our children.
This week in his address to Congress, President Biden proposed an additional $1.8 trillion in spending to fund subsidized child care, no-cost preschool, free community college, and 12 weeks of paid family leave. That brings the total additional spending requested by the president to over $6 trillion, mostly borrowed dollars. And while Biden's America's Family Plan drew plenty of discussion, it was this rebuttal statement by Republican Senator Tim Scott that turned heads.
Today, kids are being taught that the color of their skin defines them again. And if they look a certain way, they're an oppressor. From colleges to corporations to our culture, people are making money and gaining power by pretending we haven't made any progress at all, by doubling down on the divisions we've worked so hard to heal. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country.
Okay, panel, take your pick. Senator Scott's declaration or the merit of Biden's new entitlement proposal I'll start with you, Marcus Davis.
Can I defer to Tamara, because she is jumping out of her seat?
Yeah. Okay, serious. The delusions. I wonder how much he was paid to say something that damn stupid. I'm not kidding. To make that comment, to sit up there and say that that racism is not in this country. What is wrong with him? I have to go back to Kendrick Lamar. What the hell is in your DNA? Because you got to be out your mind to make that kind of statement, an unrealistic statement. It is a reality. If we don't face it, it only festers. It doesn't go away. It festers. That's why we are where we are right now. And I'm telling you, the unfortunate part is when we all don't deal with it, others do it. What the Asian Americans are experiencing right now, is because it hadn't been dealt with. That's my 45 seconds.
All right, Charles Blaine, a fellow conservative, Tim Scott, made a statement. He qualified it, said we made progress. Your thoughts?
Yeah, okay, so he didn't say that he didn't say that there's no racism here. What he said was that America is not a racist country, not unlike the same statement that Kamala Harris made the next day when she was all over the news on Good Morning America and everything else. He was saying that the original sin of slavery is not the end of the story. There's progress to be made, but we are not a racist country. And she said the same exact words, but yet when it came to Tim Scott, everybody wanted to start calling him Uncle Tom, and even the Lamar County Democratic chair here in Texas, Gary O'Connor, called him an Oreo simply because he said that. And so I find that unacceptable, because liberals love saying horrible things about black conservatives simply when they disagree. Not Tamara, I'm not saying she did that, but many liberals tend to do that. And that's unacceptable. But he did not say that there is no racism in America. He said that it doesn't define us.
All right, Marcus, your turn now.
Right. What he said was America is not a racist country. And that is flat out untrue. What Vice President Kamala Harris said was America is not a racist country. And that is flat out not true. Now, their reason for saying it may be different. Vice President Kamala Harris may have said it under political pressure. Tim Scott said it because he's a damn fool and he believes that idiocy. There's no way you can tell me that in a nation where black people are at the bottom of the totem pole in unemployment, or at the bottom of the totem pole in wealth disparity, at the bottom of the totem pole in education, at the top of the pole in incarceration, there's no way on earth you can tell me we don't live in a racist nation. I sat in my grandmother's lap who experienced all of the racism that existed in this nation. And you telling me it's disappeared in my lifetime? Where the hell did it go? That's buffoonery. That is sheer madness.
Okay, I've got to go to Chow Win.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. Racist policies produce racist outcomes. And then with those policies, you got to figure out who created those policies. Of course, this country is rooted in racism. And does anybody not find it ironic that a white man, our president, calls out white supremacy, yet a black man says we're not a racist country? I find it really ironic and disturbing. And on the issue of the infrastructure plan of Biden's, yes, if we want to root out some of these issues of oppression, we've got to have childcare. I'm a single mother of two. Childcare and healthcare and education for our communities.
All right, final word to Bob. We've got about 30 seconds, Bob.
Okay, well, I'll say real quickly that we saw that racism was alive and well this week in the Democratic Party with the labeling of Senator Scott as a Uncle Tim. And that went on trending on Twitter for 5 hours before they finally took it down. That is completely unacceptable, as many other things. Real quick on the Biden infrastructure plan, only 27% of that actually goes to infrastructure. The rest of it is just socialism.
We'll keep an eye on it, Bob. Still ahead, at the state capitol, the party of family values has some explaining to do. Drunk driving, fornication, retaliation, and the foulest of language. The ugly alleged details out of Austin after the break.
You guys cannot give Kamala Harris a pass for that.
And Charles, I gave her no pass.
You didn't.
I gave her.
Did you give her no pass?
She said it was for political purposes and that Tim.
Okay, hey, we're gonna go Charles, Bob on this one.
That's fine. I don't even know what y'all talking about. So
Yeah, she was flat out wrong for what she said.
But she was
totally
wrong as
disagree.
hell. But I'm not surprised she
I
said
disagree
it.
with why she said it. She said it because she didn't want the wave of crap coming towards her for saying that America is a racist country. It was for political reasons.
The criticism of Scott wasn't so much that he said that, as that he didn't address the institutional racism that you guys all talked about as well. And I think there's a difference between saying the country is a racist country and that there are institutionalized racist policies that need to be addressed and fixed.
If there's institutional
racism is because of the institution of this country.
Exactly.
Hey, we got reparations coming up. We can talk more about it on the air for sure.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, I get some of that extra time because y'all skipping me on this shit. I don't even know what y'all talking about. I don't know. I don't know what y'all talking about. Who's sleeping with who?
And this idea that we just deny. Look. And Malcolm X said it best. You can't stick a 9-inch knife in my back and take it out 6 inches and tell me everything is good. And there's no way we can say that everything is good in this nation and that we're not still a racist nation. Hell, we had 70+ million people vote for a man who said there were very fine people on both sides of a doggone tiki torch march. Tell me we're not a racist nation.
Go back and look at what he actually said.
Okay, you guys, I lay out what's going on the next topic in the VO, so listen closely.
Okay, all right, okay.
And Charles knows it all pretty well. Bob's had to take a look, holding his nose.
I guess we're not a sexist nation either, right? I guess we're not a misogynistic nation either, right?
How far out? How far out?
In here.
Let me fix my beard. My feathers got rough.
On this topic, Greg, is it only the
remember racist policies produce racist outcomes, and you got to ask who created those
policies come from
Democrats did.
Exactly.
Real time cue. 30 seconds. I heard Anthony. Don't worry.
Don't even try it. They full race.
Yep.
20 out.
I look fabulous. I'm just saying. I love
No modesty there.
I'm on my daughter's camera. This is working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Movie star.
That's why she should be in that movie.
Truly disturbing developments this past week involving Houston area Republicans representing us in Austin. First, the drunk driving arrest of Kingwood Representative Dan Huberty, who slammed his Corvette into the back of another vehicle and has since admitted to having a drinking problem. Then came the stunning report that newly elected spring Republican Lacey Hall was involved in a protracted affair with fellow state representative Cole Hefner. Both were married at the time. He has 7 kids. She 1. And it gets worse. Hall's former campaign manager has released texts in which Hall purportedly criticizes House Speaker Dade Phelan, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and Houston State Senator Paul Bettencourt with the kind of vulgarities I am prohibited from repeating on this broadcast. Finally, State Representative Valerie Swanson, who involved herself in this sordid business by allegedly threatening retaliation against Hall's now ex-husband if he went public about the affair before the November election. Panel, note to the party of family values. None of this amounts to practicing what you preach. Charles Blaine, unfortunately, you're familiar with all these players and these details. What's your point?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll start off by saying that Dan Huberty is seeking help, and I'm glad to hear that there's an issue there and he's trying to deal with that. Now, as far as Lacey, listen, we all do things that are wrong at times, and I don't think that we should be judged by what we do wrong. I think that as she's been in Austin, she has done a fantastic job representing her district and advocating for the concerns of her district. What she did but prior to being elected with whoever, I don't think should be what we hold against her going forward. I mean, many legislators in Austin, men, have done plenty of things that haven't been held against them, and so to hold that against her that she did prior to being elected, I don't think is okay. And as far as Valerie Swanson and her actions, listen, if she did that and she abused her office to attempt to threaten or coerce or whatever, well, then that needs to be handled. And I don't know any more about that, so I'm just going to leave it there.
Bob, what's your take on all this?
Well, clearly, these are going to be issues for the voters to weigh in on in the upcoming primary season, which begins in about 60 days, I think. It's going to be coming up pretty quick. So I think you'll see a lot of discussion about these things that in the seat currently held by Huberty. You're going to see a lot of people, I think, jumping into that race. There's already been some people announced, and it'll be interesting to see what happens in Hull's race as well. If she runs again, if she faces a primary opponent, the voters are going to have a lot to look at. And I think there's a lot of issues on both sides here, male versus female. We had a situation last week where a lobbyist was accused of doing a date rape drug on one of the legislative staffers. So there's clearly a lot of problems in Austin that need to be addressed.
All right, Chow. Charles brings up an interesting issue. Is this a double standard here?
Yeah, I think so. But we've got, just like Bob said, we've got so many issues in the session right now. We've got a month before it ends. We've got bigger fish to fry, and lives are at stake. We've got permitless carry that's sailing through the legislature. We've got big issues. And to listen to the scandals and the smut that's going on, that's not what the legislators were called to Austin to do. Look, we make mistakes, we're human, but let's just get back to the drawing board and get back to business.
All right, good thought. Coming up, as the national conversation on social equity deepens, calls are growing more urgent to atone for centuries of slavery. An uncomfortable discussion is dead ahead, so stay with us.
Some hot Republican tea. That's some hot tea.
I've never been interested in a person's that's in their off-duty dealings, right?
That's some hot tea. Charles, that's some hot tea.
I think what people do with their personal lives is their personal lives, how they perform publicly.
Okay,
Charles, I
need to know whether there's. I'm reading this,
Charles,
right?
You stumble coming out the gate, buddy. I thought you was speaking Arabic. I'm being the Arabic phrase.
But I couldn't. I don't. They just.
You're blushing, Charles.
Okay, let's keep it. Yeah.
I mean it, y'all.
Okay.
That's a lot of hot tea to try to get around, baby.
Okay.
The thing is, what allegedly happened, it did happen prior to her election, and I don't know.
And Charles, I agree with that. I agree that hey, this happened before. This doesn't have anything to do with them holding office. But I do believe that you can't take the pulpit on family values while doing those things. I don't think it's my business what you do at home. But I think it's hypocritical for you to take the pulpit on family, the party of family values while you're.
And here's the thing: you got to
legislate. Hey, everybody, listen up. Listen up.
Right?
We're going to get about close to a minute each on this. 30 seconds out. This is reparations.
Okay.
Here we go. Welcome back. Slavery, Jim Crow, lynching, separate but equal, chronic discrimination at every level of American society, each a component of our American history for which we should feel collective shame, seek to remedy. Houston Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee is among lawmakers seeking the payment of reparations to the descendants of those whose slave labor enriched white America. A little perspective, in 1860, the bodies of enslaved black Americans were valued at $3 billion, an asset worth more at that time than all of America's factories and railroads combined. Another fact, in 2021, the average white American family has roughly 10 times the wealth of the average black American family. There is certainly precedent for compensation. Native Americans, Japanese Americans, and even some Jewish Americans after the Holocaust all were offered some form of payment. So the question becomes, can any national reckoning be complete without at least attempting to deliver the unpaid wages for 2.5 centuries of bondage? I'm going to start with you tomorrow, Bell.
Thank you, Greg. Listen, they have got to do something. This was government-sanctioned law to hold slaves. And if we can do reparations or whatever you want to call it to the Japanese prisoners, making sure Jewish people get art back that was taken from Hitler, try to help the Jewish nations that we can show to get back their money, they need to do something. The government kept this in place.
You got it.
And even after this was out of the books, they made sure the standards still stayed. They came up with sharecropping, which is another form of slavery. And even now, this is my opinion, care less whether you like it or not, the prison system that exists right now, where you have people, as marijuana becomes legal in different states, you still got people doing all kind of time for that is now no longer illegal, for what that they were punished and the way they were done. We know the crack laws were way harder than the cocaine laws. So they ain't talking about something that happened 100 years old. We're talking about something that systematically continues. That's why we need to support House Bill 40, 100%. They need to do something.
All right, Charles Bland, you're a conservative, but this issue may rise above partisan politics.
Yeah, I think it does. And I think when you look at a lot, I mean, listen, this is a conversation we need to have because I think it's coming in one form or fashion. Marshall, Texas, a small town somewhere between here and Dallas, they actually brought this issue up a couple months ago because in their county, they knew that they had one of the largest slave populations in the state of Texas back in the 1860s. And so last month, they brought up a conversation about giving reparations to descendants of those slaves. They pulled it off of the city council agenda and didn't do it, but it started a conversation. Austin, Texas also passed something about a year ago that wanted to start a process of looking at how they can pay reparations to descendants of slaves. So it's a conversation that needs to be had. And I think even today, you still see vestiges of the past. I mean, we have a bill coming out of the Senate that wants to remove racial prohibitions from the deed restrictions. I mean, these things are still embedded in the policy and in law today. And so I do think that we need to have this conversation. Now, is it going to be a direct cash payment? I don't know. Maybe we should look at something like assistance with down payment for housing, or maybe free education or something like that. We should have that conversation. I don't know what the best form of it is, but I do think that conversation is important to have. Okay,
Marcus, take 45 seconds here.
So let me chime in on this, and respectfully, Charles, and tomorrow, they don't need to do something. They need to write a check. Charles, it's not an idea of a conversation that needs to be had. An action needs to be taken, and that is a check. People who can't figure out what should happen, look at what happened. You got free labor for hundreds of years. You owe a debt, pay it up. And I need to say this, right? Because when people think reparations, they're only thinking about slavery. My grandmother, my great-grandmother worked in this nation without the right to vote. You owe me dimes and dollars for what you denied my ancestors the opportunity to do.
All right, Bob. It's a pretty good argument. We're spending trillions of dollars. Why aren't we paying this bill?
Well, I'm going to go back to, you talked about the previous reparations that were done. Those were all paid directly to the people who were directly impacted by the atrocities that were committed against them. How do you identify who should receive these payments and who should pay these payments? You know, it's I don't understand that part of it at all. But we've been working for 50 years to try to address some of the wrongdoings that were done earlier in this country. We have minority set-asides for disadvantaged businesses. We have minority hiring preferences. We have a lot of different programs out there to try to push all minorities up, not just the ancestors of a certain segment of people, which is probably a pretty small piece of the American population at this point. So let's look at ways that we can bring up all people in this and help everybody, and not be doing something that's really, really divisive. You know, I think this would be a hugely divisive issue as it tried to go through Congress. Let's find ways we can work together to help all of these people.
Yeah, we can do that after you give me my money.
All right, we're going to have more conversations on this issue in the future, guaranteed. Up next, more Texans means more clout in Congress for the Lone Star State. Our crew is set to work through the likely impact on the other side of this break.
The House Bill 40 sets up a commission, and they do need to set up a commission so they can look into this. Because we're talking about those people who were directly impacted, and that's why that was done. And look, in my family,
here's the thing.
In my family in Huntsville, Alabama, there's a university called University of Alabama.
Sorry, you got cut out of that topic.
That was our
It's
land.
okay. It's all good.
That was our land. They took my great-great-grandfather. My aunt is 90-some years old. She still remembers her mother telling her about this and told them they were going to burn them up if they didn't give them all that property. And that's where the University of Alabama sits to this day. And it was on the books in our family name. You think they're going to give us back a damn thing? Hell no.
Here's my thing. My mom's maiden name's Comer. Their family was owned by B.B. Comer, and they lived on the Comer plantation, and that's where they were born. My thing is, the reason I don't think we should get direct cash payments is because I didn't break my back for that work. What would have come from their payments would have been houses or whatever generational wealth that could have then been passed down that would have set our family up for today. And so
how did the slave owners benefit? They got cash, baby. They got straight cash. And
money
so
talks.
when you talk about how do we get it back? Yes, straight cash needs to be a part of the equation. Are there some other things that should be included? Of course, but straight cash is a part of that equation.
Look, Marcus, we're already proving that money talks.
There's
make no mistake about it.
Surviving on money that our people earn for them. You don't think that? You don't see that?
I'm not saying I'm not saying write cash payments off, and that shouldn't be a part. That shouldn't be at all.
No. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying you saying people who are affected. The generational wealth that I didn't get was because of the generational punishment that my ancestors put on. How the hell did that affect me today? That does affect me.
I didn't say it didn't. That's my argument was that it does affect us, and that's why.
Here's the thing: money talks. We just got stimulus checks. People got it. Now,
I understand,
money talks.
Here's the thing: would I prefer them?
Give me the 30-second cue.
When we had the economic crisis under the pandemic, Charles, when we had the economic crisis under the pandemic, what did the government do? They wrote
give us money.
They wrote checks.
Okay, but hear me
out. They didn't say let's work out a housing plan, let's work out a car plan, let's work out some
30 seconds out,
plans.
Everybody.
They wrote checks. They wrote checks in the form of unemployment. They wrote checks in the form of stimulus checks.
Here's what I will agree with Charles: is $1,000 check is not going to heal the wounds of the past, but it does mean something. It does.
Stand by, everybody.
Oh no, it's not 1,000.
Okay. They're not coming out with $100,000.
Stand by.
Why not?
Because it's just not going to happen. I mean,
The census numbers are in, and turns out Texas is the winner with the addition of 4 million new residents over the past decade. The Lone Star State has earned 2 additional seats in Congress. While Asians are the fastest growing demographic in Texas, about half of our state's population growth is being attributed to Hispanics. Panel, we won't know until at least the fall where these new congressional districts will be drawn, but we do know Republicans in Austin will control that process. Chow, interesting fact, Asians, the fastest growing demographic in Texas. Your thoughts?
Yeah, we still don't have a voice and a seat at that table. Isn't that ironic? Look, I think it's great that we're moving ahead and our population is growing in the state of Texas, but I'm very leery about remapping the state and where that's going to go with a Republican-controlled legislature. Look, Asians are fast growing, Hispanics are, but yet we make a very little population piece of the decisions that are made at the table.
All right, Bob, I got to think they're going to split these seats into probably one Democrat, one Republican congressional district. Your thoughts?
I think they'll end up with 2 Republican Congress people coming out of this. Democrats controlled the redistricting and gerrymandering for over 100 years in this country. Republicans have had it for the last 20-something years. It's the way the system works, and we need to find better ways to do it. In California, they have a commission that does redistricting, but now the Democrats in California are struggling to reshape that commission so that they can control how that works. It is pure politics. That's all it is. And fortunately for Texas, we're going to get more representation, and fortunately for the country, California gets a little less representation.
All right, Charles, any possible way a redistricting plan that doesn't have a new Democratic seat in Texas makes it through the courts?
I think they'll try to challenge it probably along racial lines. I mean, a large percentage of the folks who moved in here, of the 25.1 million that moved in since 2010, were Hispanic. So I think we can see an argument there. But ultimately, I think to your previous point about them being Republicans or Democrats, most of these people are moving. We've seen through these migratory patterns with the census release was that they're coming from Democratic states and coming to Republican states, largely in the South. Why? Because they like the climate that has been created by that system. And so we're just going to keep seeing that. So I don't necessarily see them splitting it down the middle and splitting the baby. I think they're gonna create 2 new Republican districts. But of course, there will be a challenge. There's always a challenge, and then the courts are going to have to fight through this.
I got 20 seconds left. Who wants it?
Look, let me say this. Greg, it is mighty noble of you to hope that the GOP would split those seats. That's laughable. I'm sorry, but they're not doing that. Their greedy butts are going to take everything that they can get. And Bob, those 100 years that Democrats control redistricting, half of the time they were not the Democrats we see today. Just for no. And it was longer than 20 years. Because remember that little runaway in Austin what happened about 30 years ago.
Leaving it there, Marcus. All right, coming up, 918 days out from the next Houston mayoral election, and the potential competitors are already maneuvering for prime position. Plus, take the shot or lose your job, the uncompromising mandate at Houston's Methodist Hospital.
Hey, when did the Democrats run away to that little town up from Austin and get
that was in like the early 90s or late 80s.
I think it was. I thought I was in college when it went.
Yeah, right. They went to Oklahoma.
Right, yeah. They went to Oklahoma.
No, and then your good buddy Charles Dutton came back and sold them out.
I thought it was Al Edwards.
Huh? No,
it was Al Edwards.
Harold Dutton came back to said I think he said somebody had a doctor's appointment.
Okay. Everybody gets 30 seconds on this. I'm probably going to start with tomorrow and then Charles.
Which one is this?
Is this the mayor one?
Because I know they've been approached, and I imagine you've been approached, Marcus.
Greg, I thought you were gonna run. That's what the rumor mill is.
I don't have a dog in this fight.
Come on, Bob. You do, Bob.
No, he don't.
You don't have any ideas on who you think should be the mayor of Houston?
He live in the country.
but he does.
Well, Bill ain't here.
He has relationships in Houston.
Bill
ain't running.
No, I'm just kidding.
Bill's noticeably absent today.
No, he ain't running. Not for this.
Here we go, guys.
What happened?
Gossip, the lifeblood of emerging fact. I didn't write that, but as a political reporter, I certainly agree with it. With that said, there's been plenty of chatter crossing my radar about the 2023 Houston mayoral election. With incumbent Sylvester Turner term limited, there are a slew of folks not so privately poking around and seriously testing the water. Leading the list, State Senator John Whitmire, Dean of the Texas Senate, who would bring a hefty war chest. Also in play, well-known at-large Houston City Council member Michael Kubosh, as well as District J Councilman Edward Pollard. I'm told former mayoral candidate Dwight Boykins is totally contemplating a run, as is former U.S. Senate candidate Amanda Edwards, both of whom have spent time on the Horseshoe at City Hall. In terms of outsiders, well-known businessman Gilbert Garcia is said to be considering the race, as is Dr. Laura Murillo, longtime leader of Houston's Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. To everyone mentioned If I'm completely off base, please let me know. But in the meantime, panel, what do you make of this emerging field? Tamara Bell, I know at least half of these people have talked to you.
Let's get it started, okay? Because I mean, yes, there are many people jockeying for their position, but I'm one. I love to wait to see who all's on the island before I pick who getting off. So I want to wait and see, but I can't think of any names that you mentioned that I had not already heard. And I'm not allowed to mention any names that you didn't mention. So with that being said, it's going to be a lively, I'm not kidding, it's going to be a lively race. And I look forward to it. I swear this is oxygen for me. I hate the 4 years. I don't like that. I don't like that. I wish we would have did 2 3s or whatever, but I don't like the 4 years at all. So I really was used to the every 2 years. So I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Charles Blaine, what's your take? I know people have been stopping by to visit.
Oh yeah, this has been fun. I'm excited, just like tomorrow. I'm very excited about this. I think everybody brings something really unique to the table. Of the folks that you mentioned, you know, when Kubash gets off of council, he'll be one of the longest serving council members, I think top in 10 years. Edward Pollard is going to be on the heels of just with the fellow black council members leading through this police reform in the city. You're going to have Dwight Boykins, who has been doing a lot of work with the Harris County District Attorney's Office and Second Chance programming. Then you have John Whitmire off of the heels of a legislative session. So it's going to be really interesting. Out of the second tier candidates that you mentioned, I don't know much about them. I'm not sure where Amanda Edwards has been recently. And Gilbert Garcia, I know that he was working for Tony Busby, so it'll be interesting to see what carries over. That's the extent I know him. I don't know much about him, so it'll be interesting to see if anything carries over from that race. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to this. I'm glad we're talking about it already.
Okay, take 30 seconds, Chow.
Well, look, that's a great slate of candidates. Many of them are our friends. I'm interested in seeing how they're going to help our communities, whether it become police reform or communities of color, how they're really going to affect change. And we've got a great slate. So the attrition begins, I suppose.
Hey, Marcus, anybody, any of this slate showing up down at the club, Breakfast Club?
Listen, I think that this election for the city of Houston is incredibly important. And that's not to say the other ones haven't been, but Houston is on the cusp of reaching its potential. And we need a real visionary, a real leader, a real executive in this office. And unfortunately, the stuff that I'm hearing about, you know, stale elected officials wanting to, you know, end their career as the mayor, that's just not exciting to me. I just don't think that that's the right move for the city of Houston. So I'm hopeful that Houstonians will really understand the necessity for us to select a visionary and an effective executive as our next mayor.
Real quickly, Bob, not any conservatives
like
in there.
I think the most exciting thing about this next election is the name that won't be on the list, and that's Sylvester Turner. So that said, there's a lot of really good qualified people that are jumping into this race. I hope there's some more. It's a very diverse city. Let's see a very diverse field of candidates that we can pick from, people that can reach across the aisle and build a coalition to govern this city and move it forward.
All right, we're leaving it there. Up next, fired for refusing to take a vaccine that's still considered experimental. As the pandemic lingers, should employers get to terminate workers who just aren't ready?
About John Whitmire. That was
He the main one.
He will be the biggest fundraiser, I'm sure.
With him the other day on something else, so he did not mention that.
That'd certainly open up an interesting Senate race.
Oh, yeah, that's a
or
big
does he?
one.
No, he doesn't have to step down to run for mayor, does he?
No, I don't think he has to step down.
And that's the crazy part, man. It's the way the Constitution is written, but.
Well, and unfortunately, there's other people that would like to get into this race that would have to step down in order to run.
Hey, everybody, listen up.
Yes.
So we're going to do two short segments, the H and the I block on this issue. So if I don't get to you in the first round, know you're going to get your say in the second round, okay?
Okay, got it.
This is open carry and what else?
I thought this was fired for the vaccine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
This is whether employers should have the right to demand their employees return to work as a condition of employment.
Hey, tomorrow, there's a rumor that the Biden administration is looking at another highly.
I'm not allowed to talk about nothing.
Placed.
I'm not
elected
allowed to
officials
talk about
here
anything.
in the city of Houston.
I can't say nothing.
Can you confirm that?
I can confirm that.
Asked and answered.
He was about to die. And I had to move.
We got the SOT at the top of this, right?
Charles, have you heard that, Charles?
I've heard it, but I don't know if we're talking about the same person because I heard it a couple months ago and then it died down. So
no, I heard what about the one a couple months ago who they said hell no once they named got. That was funny.
It would be very interesting.
That was funny. They were like,
it would make that last conversation even more interesting.
30 out.
Greg, you didn't even put Chris Brown in there. I just realized.
Yeah, Chris Brown running.
Second tier.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
And is Eric Dick running again?
15, stand by.
And what about Griffin? Is he still running?
Stand by.
Brad Bateau.
Oh my God. Oh.
I knew that the date was looming over my head of me to get the vaccine, and we were constantly being pressured.
And when nurse Michelle Fuentes ultimately refused to take the COVID-19 vaccination, she was fired from her job at Methodist Hospital, despite having voluntarily cared for patients in the coronavirus unit during the height of the pandemic. Methodist is requiring all of its staff to receive the vaccine as a condition of employment. CEO Dr. Mark Boom says the policy amounts to prioritizing safety. Other hospital systems, universities, and employers have adopted or are considering the vaccine mandate as well. Panel, civil liberty versus the so-called greater good. What's your point, Tamara Bell?
Look, a lot of jobs already require that you get a flu shot. I know that a lot of school districts require it for teachers. I know that a lot of places where they do entertainment, where they have a lot of people from the public. I'm sure at the hospitals they require the employees to get the flu shots. We all had to get the polio shots. You got to get the measles, the mumps, all your shots before you can come to school. I don't know how they're going to win this one. I really don't. Because this is not setting a precedence. This is continuing what already exists.
Yeah.
All right, Marcus, you're an employer. Is this an unreasonable request?
Well, currently there's no requirement at our businesses to get the shot. It is something that you have to consider when you have to consider the impact that it can have on the business itself. Now, in this situation where it affects public health, that's a whole nother level, and so I can understand. But at the end of the day, let's get real. Texas is an at-will state. You can be fired for whatever.
Yep.
All right, Chal, what's your take on this?
I think that Dr. Boone had very courageous leadership in this case. I'm speaking personally. The vaccine is a public health issue. These are essential workers putting their lives on the job at risk as well. And they're ill people, sick people at the hospital, and they need to be cared for. Look, my mother was at Methodist Hospital in January, and she did not want to have surgery until we got the vaccine, and I had to advocate and insist for it. So look, Dr. Boone, you got to give him credit, taking that sort of courageous, unprecedented move and saying all Methodist workers need to be vaccinated for the public health and the good of the community.
Bob Price, is this a slippery slope?
Well, absolutely it is. You know, as a member who served in the U.S. military, I was required to take all kinds of shots, and we did it. And if you didn't, you got punished. But this is different. This is in corporate America, and I think corporate America should not be able to be able to force what gets stuck into your body when you don't really know the full consequences of it. People are dying from some of these vaccines that are out there, and it needs to be a personal decision. Having said that, I think healthcare could be a carve-out exception for that when you look at what might go on in nursing homes and hospitals.
I agree with you on that, Bob. That's why I said this is different, because you're around people who are already ill.
Okay, hold on there. We want to hear from the rest of the panel on this issue of vaccines and workers' rights. So stick around. We're going to talk about it in the next segment.
Greg,
Yeah,
you okay?
April, you got to, yeah, well.
I thought you were having an Isaiah Carey moment. I thought.
No, I'm just trying to get April's attention to mute hers because I'm getting what's called mixed minus. And I'm not hearing. I'm not hearing what you're saying. Chell knows exactly what I'm talking about. And it's
repeating.
Basically you're hearing the conversation echoed and you can't understand any of it. You have to kind of
really
you can muscle through it. You can muscle through it.
Yeah, that happens to me when I get out the pool.
Okay, how long do we have in this segment, April?
What are we talking about?
I thought we were carrying
Still on the same topic.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to go back. Charles hasn't spoken on this. And does anybody have a burning desire to rebut or talk about another element that we didn't get to?
No.
No.
May have to go to you, Bob.
You know, we could talk about those immigrants and the smuggling.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that.
Well, we can talk about how the
Actually, there's a good segue into that. I'll take that.
What, Bob? What about the state refusing to take the money for COVID?
What?
The state refusing to take federal dollars for COVID.
You're talking about Medicaid
exactly
expansion.
Oh, well, tell us.
How much time have we got?
Stretch your legs, Charles. We got a minute 50 before I have to close the show.
Guess there were some elections last night we didn't talk about.
What the governor said was that it was the federal government's responsibility to take those actions and get it done, and that he didn't need to be burdening the states with that. He didn't just refuse to take the money.
He did say that while he refused to take the money.
Yeah, but you got to put it in context. I mean, it's not like he's saying that doesn't need
Stand
to get
by,
done.
everybody.
You know.
But doesn't that still burden those counties, those areas? Because they still got to address it.
The federal government needs to address it, and it should have been.
Welcome back, and back to the issue of mandating COVID vaccinations as a condition of employment. Want to get your take, Charles Blaine.
Yeah, so a little bit I read about this. There's 3,000 Methodist employees out of the 26,000 that they employ who said they want to wait and haven't gotten the vaccine and don't know if they will by the deadline. I think it's like June 5th or something that they have to get it. And so, I mean, these are healthcare professionals who are saying they want to wait because the vaccine, it only has emergency use authorization. It has not been fully approved by the FDA. So to understand, it's not unbelievable that people have a hesitancy when it comes to taking this and want to wait and see what happens as it continues to roll out. And I do think that this could be a slippery slope where then you have other employers who start to force their employees to take it. I know Governor Abbott had an executive order that said that if you take public funds, you cannot force your consumers to show that you have that they have vaccines or a vaccine passport like some other states are doing, but it doesn't protect the employees. So, I mean, I don't have an issue with them wanting to wait. We shouldn't be forcing people to rush into something if they don't feel comfortable with it. But, you know, it's a real state, like they said.
Listen, I'm sorry, this is not a force. This is real simple.
I said it's an at-will state.
Right. This is company policy, and if you want to work here, then this is what you have available to you. And you have the option to no longer work here. That's not a force. They have an option to go look for jobs elsewhere. And while I agree with the hesitancy, I get it. But in the meantime, you're dealing with folks, grandmas who are laying up on operating tables, and you cannot put those lives in jeopardy. That's my opinion.
Understandably, they've been doing that for the past year, and they've taken all the proper precautions to do it. And so they're still going to take those proper precautions that they've been taking over the past year. That's not changing. It's just that
all right, folks, we're going to have to leave it right there. Thanks for joining us. The conversation continues on a national level next with Fox News Sunday and host Chris Wallace. For those who want to hear more from our panel, we'll continue with What's Your Point Overtime on our live stream and on Facebook. Meantime, from all of us here, have a safe and healthy week.
was a little lawyerly.
Okay.
If you work for United Airlines or any of those other airlines, you got to wear those clothes. You got to wear that uniform, whether you want to wear it or not. Or
That's different than having something stuck in your body.
But by the way,
don't
this
have
is
to
not
have it stuck
corporate
in your body.
America.
You can-
Bob
you
called
can-
it
you can
corporate.
opt
This
out.
is a nonprofit public health institution.
Yes.
This is not corporate America.
No, it's not.
I mean, we're talking about essential
This is a
workers.
I'm sorry, is that not a
Ask Anthony if he
corporation?
wants me
I
to
think
pull my.
for the past year,
Nonprofit.
one of the ladies is suing about
It's
this.
a nonprofit corporation.
For the past year, she used
Nonprofit
all
institution.
this stuff, and that's not going to change.
Institution is not a
Charles,
form of
Charles,
business.
that's because it wasn't available. That's because it wasn't available.
Kill people in nursing homes who didn't have vaccinations.
No, I get it.
Y'all see whether
It could be a carve out for that.
Y'all see whether the worker wasn't vaccinated and kill those the elderly people that
You know how many of my friends have lost parents, and my mother's friends have, because they were at the hospital with hospital workers who were COVID. They're bringing it into the hospital.
I understand that, and I don't have an issue with them firing these people if they choose not to take it. But my issue is that they shouldn't be they shouldn't be. I'm missing the word I'm saying, but villainized because they don't want to take a vaccine that
No
only.
one's villain.
No, a lot of people are.
You're not a villain. You are free to work elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if
I am setting you free.
and if you're a nurse, you're gonna find a job. You ain't gonna be unemployed.
Well, here's an interesting one.
and look,
So I know someone in you know, they have a small office, not a small office, 160 people. Starting Monday, all masks off, because they've calculated that everybody in that office, in this corporate office, has everybody but 5 people have gotten vaccines, so they brought the vaccines to the office. So that's what they're saying. Masks off, everyone's vaccinated except for 5 people. Well, guess what? You're going to know who those 5 people are.
And yet we still let the border be wide open and bring in hundreds of thousands of people who are not vaccinated and are not being vaccinated.
Which is why Governor Abbott should not have rejected the funds that the federal government sent to
The federal government should take care of the problem that it created through the pen stroke of Joe Biden.
And if the federal government doesn't, then the state still has an obligation to protect its citizenry. Governor Abbott can't abdicate his responsibilities if the federal government doesn't do what they're supposed to do. He still has the stewardship of the state.
So how is he abdicating his responsibility? They can still get the shots in Texas, and they can still get it at the taxpayer's expense. It's just he's not taking the federal money to do it.
By protecting the taxpayers' money, by taking the federal government funding.
Yeah.
Take that money, man.
It's just politics, but the real health issue is them they're bringing these.
I agree with that, Bob. I think it's
kids that are being raped and beaten and abused and sticking them in shoulder to shoulder, head to head, face to face, many times without masks, and they don't even test them when they're bringing them into the Border Patrol facility. That the government, the state of Texas, doesn't even have access to these people to give them vaccines or to give them tests, and yet the federal government won't take care of that. They don't get tested or vaccinated until up to 10 to 15 days later, when they're shipped to one of these temporary detention centers that the left used to decry, and now they're publicly supporting them. And Texas doesn't have access to those either.
You are spot on. I agree with 99% of what you said.
Children who do not go to school, who are behind because they had the digital divide and they are not going to be able to catch up. I'm telling you, nobody is looking at the impact on our children who are here, who had this last year of uneducation, not education, uneducation. Because let me tell you, everybody don't have sufficient Wi-Fi. And if you have children of different ages, you have you working from home, you got one kid on the computer, another kid on the computer. That's slow. These children are being left behind. What are we doing right now so that they can be ready over the summer? You got vaccinations, teachers got vaccinated. They need to have educational pods. They need to use places like the Houston Children's Museum and other places to do summer programs to get our own kids back on track.
That's where some of that money needs to go.
No, but I'm saying that what COVID has done, it could have been used for that, because what COVID has done to their education is not their fault. It's not their fault. The government shut down the schools. They shut them down. So now we need to do something to get these kids back on track, because education is the only way. It is the only way. And you got kindergartners, first grade, second, third. I am concerned about them. Bigger kids can do it, but when it's hard enough to keep a damn kindergartner and a first grader's attention when you're looking at them. But then you give them a computer, it's damn near impossible. So what are we doing? How are we addressing that? That money could have been used for that.
Well, here's how we're addressing it tomorrow. We're going to cram more and more people into these classrooms with all of the unaccompanied migrant children that are being pushed into this country. We're going to make our classrooms be 75 people instead of 50 people, and it should be 25 to 30 people. So, but part of the infrastructure bill that I do agree with is fixing this broadband gap, if you will, both in rural America and in disadvantaged communities. We need to make sure that everyone has access to broadband, not just for education, but for just doing things that you need to do in this society. And I think that is a valid part of the infrastructure bill.
And Bob, you're absolutely correct. We make these cries about what's happening at the border, but not making the cry of what happens when classrooms are overpacked and schools are overpacked and education suffers as a result, and a number of other things. But it goes back to that whole partisan stick, right? We get on our high horse and we ride with it. I do want to bring up something that we didn't mention. The gross domestic product, the GDP, right? Up significantly.
Everything's up.
Huh?
Everything is up.
Historically.
Yeah.
Right. And I just, I bring that up because
Trump policies are working.
I'm just saying, if right now, this time last year, if another president was in office, we will be bragging about how great a job they're doing with the economy.
I heard a lot of bragging about how good the economy was this week, and I think it's great. I think it's wonderful that Biden hadn't had a chance yet to screw up the things that Trump put in place and got moving forward.
I'm glad you brought that up.
The tax increase that he's proposing is going to bring that to a screeching halt.
Wait, what's going to bring it to a screeching halt?
The tax increases the capital gains tax, the corporate income tax. Corporations don't pay tax. Corporations pass that on to the consumers. Or they lay off people, and that's going to just crush this economy. And you look at the death tax, the Democrats' favorite tax, the death tax, is coming back, which directly impacts small business and the farming community, family-owned farms.
So, Charles, are the Democrats likely to use the second bullet of budget reconciliation to push through the tax hikes? Is that because they can't get it through a Senate right now? So they've got one more before.
I mean, how bad? It depends on how bad you want it to, spend that political capital on a tax increase. I mean, I don't think so. I think for them, a lot of times paying lip service to something is more than enough to satisfy their base, and they don't have to necessarly deliver on things. I mean,
and let me say this while we're talking about taxes, because there's a misconception out there, right? When Bob, you brought this up just a minute ago. When you use the word corporate, right? Corporate tax. Most people want to think about Amazon. Most people want to think about Apple. They want to think about Microsoft and all those cats. You have to remember and realize when you use the word corporate, you're also talking about Main Street businesses, right? So it's not just the Bill Gates and the Jeff Bezoses that those taxes affect. It's the Marcus Davises that those taxes
absolutely affect. And the subchapter S corporations, which are all small business, they're going to jack the taxes up on, and that's where the bulk of job growth comes from, is from small business community.
Thank you. And that's the problem with our government, that we always want to throw the fix to all of our problems on the backs of businesses, and the bulk of it lands on the backs of small businesses, right? We need healthcare. Okay, here's an idea. Let's make the businesses do it. What? Oh, yeah. Look, people can't afford rent. People can't afford cars. They can't afford groceries. How do we fix that? Let's make the businesses do it. What?
Yeah, now you're going to have to give paid family leave too, Marcus.
About the groceries.
Now you're going to have to give paid family leave too. Does that give you a burden?
And tell me this, why the hell is food getting so damn high?
Hey, because I shared this before, and y'all better realize the cost of food is going up. And here's something I shared with the Democratic Party before I cast my vote, yes, for Biden and Vice President Harris, that they needed to pay attention to what the other harms are that are around the corner. You can't talk just about labor without talking about the rising cost of everything else. And if you only limit the conversation to doubling the labor costs in this nation and exclude the fact that it's going to raise the price of meat, it's going to raise the price of eggs, it's going to raise the price of rice and corn, and we know what happens when the price of corn goes up. The price of gas goes up. Yep. You know, you gotta think this through. But COVID has done a number on food, right? I mean, it just is.
Marcus, I got another quick question. How does the $15 an hour minimum wage impact waiters and waitresses?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
I'm not certain until the legislation comes out. So right now in the state of Texas, there's a minimum that waiters and waitresses have to make, right? They have to meet, you have to meet minimum wage, or the employer has to cover that. I don't know what the new legislation, whether the new legislation will include waiters and waitresses. Now I will tell you, in the city of Houston, when they mandated that, places like the airport, when they mandated that $15 an hour, it included waiters and waitresses, and it hurt restaurants in the airport big time.
So if the combined hourly wage plus their tips doesn't equal $15 an hour, you have to make up the difference.
You'd have to make up the difference.
Wow.
Would it be better, Marcus, just out of curiosity, would it be better to just have that minimum wage and then pool those tips to pay waiters and waitresses? That's not what they prefer, is what I understand. I mean, I was a waiter.
Or you go to the Europe model where you just do away with tipping and pay the waitresses their salary.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot of conversation about that. A couple of big time restaurateurs tried to address that, but you know, I think we're stuck in our culture. You know, here, you know, in America. I don't know. I do know that if we double the labor in a 5-year time period, we're asking for a disaster. That is not being insensitive to the people who cannot, who don't live at a certain level, or live at the poverty rate, or work 40 hours a week. I'm just stating a reality. We have to consider the danger of those small businesses that employ those people, that may have to lay those people off or shut their doors as a result.
Big prices up about the percentage.
It's inflationary for sure.
Right, because none of us are talking about the fact that they are talking about in this city, in which most of us reside, raising the water bill 60% over 5 years.
Listen, where's soup level?
I mean, that is unconscionable. If you're somebody who owns a bunch of rental properties or whatever, I mean, I'm serious, and don't have one of those big apartment complexes, you're talking 60%. First off, we already got screwed in 09 when the bill was going to go up for the what was it supposed to be for keeping the flooding down, and we were supposed to be getting
the rain tax.
That's right, the drain tax.
Yeah. The illegal rain tax.
That's
that
right.
We're still collecting.
15
that
cents.
was a scam at its finest.
It's probably 15 cents, and my bill went from $17 to $70. So how the hell is that 15 damn cents?
But you remember the mantra that they had? Oh, we want to do this because it keep grandma from getting flooded. I was still on radio then, and man, everybody came on the stage. You want to do this because you want to keep your grandma's house from getting flooded. Well, grandma's house still got flooded, and she got taxed.
There you go. So I mean, this is a concern that I just don't believe we have addressed on the show, and many people are not aware of it because of the way City Council is now with the Zoom, and you used to have people go down there and they would go back and tell their communities what they saw and stuff. It's like that's a vacuum over there. But I think that is something we really need to talk about, because this is a massive.
Why didn't we do what we did with the red light thing, which is put it back on the ballot and let people vote it away?
Well, the court overruled it and said it was unconstitutional, but the city's still collecting the money.
Because the city.
Well, they reauthorized it in the election. It was last year or the year before that. They had another vote on it.
That's right. And it was either A, B, or C or D, or you had to pick A and B or pick B and C. It was one of those.
On Tuesday, and when the moon was full.
To go in the
Yep.
You know, if
that was
we
to get the money in the lockbox.
on the local level, it's the rain tax. On the state level, it's the franchise tax. That's the other big hustle that they're still not trying to take away from small businesses. It's amazing.
Well, they've exempted a lot of small businesses from the franchise tax. What is the exemption now? Up to $1.5 million in revenue, something like that.
Yeah, Bob. But do you know how? And I'm not trying to be funny, but a $2 million business is not a that's not a big hurt.
No, I get it.
You know,
I get it.
And to have, and this is one of the issues I have with the GOP. What they say on the federal level is not what they say on the local level. They don't want.
The GOP's been fighting this for decades. You know, Dan Patrick and Paul Betancourt have been fighting it, but for some reason they haven't been able to get traction on it in the legislature.
I wonder why. They're able to get traction on open carry. They're able to get traction on Constitution.
I'm going to say, I find that.
Wait a second. Let me jump in here. I talked to a state senator in the know, and permitless carry does not have the votes still in the Texas Senate.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to pass.
I was so
Stone Huffman.
You said what?
I'm voting for it.
Now, are you pleased by that news?
Of course. I mean, we just, we had a news conference with the League of Women Voters last Wednesday on permitless carry, and that's the day that, Ed was announced that he was joining ICE. But look, we feel like you're going to put more women and children at risk. You're just making it easier to carry a gun. You're just making it more accessible.
That's not what the stats indicate nationwide in the 21, 22 states that already have it.
Well, I don't know what nationwide it indicates, but I know what it indicates right now in the city of Houston, and we are very violent.
You fear that it's going to indicate. You don't know what it's going to do, but there are prohibitions in this against increasing the prohibitions of people who commit domestic violence, who absolutely are not allowed to buy a firearm.
I understand that, but people slip through the cracks, Bob.
Well, I know, because we don't enforce the laws that are on the books. We need to enforce the laws that are on the books and quit trying to make new laws that only hurt law-abiding citizens. And so by putting restrictions on my rights, on Marcus's rights, on Charles's rights, it hurts everybody instead of focusing on the criminals, the people that abuse these women and abuse their children and abuse. Spousal abuse goes both directions, but majority of it is violence against women. That has got to be stopped, and that has got to be put the most severe penalties on it that you can put on it.
I understand
Anybody that uses a gun on a crime at the federal level, if you use a gun in the commission of a felony, they add on a 20-year sentence on top of the sentence for doing that. Let's do that with domestic violence. If you're carrying a gun in domestic violence, add another 10 years to the penalty.
Wow.
I'm good with that, but look, I just think you bring this permitless carry, you're just gonna open up Pandora's box for more problems.
I do not like that term permitless carry. I don't, because the Constitution permits it, and
right.
I just don't.
Well, and the other side calls it
constitutional carry. The Supreme Court's about to rule on that too, and I think they're going to rule that you don't have to have a permit for it. But the good thing about having a permit is it does provide some background check information on people, except that the problem is that the information doesn't feed into the system to tell people who should not be allowed to buy a firearm. Many of the states that are most concerned about firearm and gun control won't put the information about people that are hospitalized for mental abuse into the system. They won't put their convicted felons into the system. They don't put things in there that would give the government the ability to accurately determine who is legally not qualified to own a firearm. And we don't need new laws. We just need to use the laws that we've got and make them work. You don't get, we punish less than 2% of the people that lie on their federal firearms application. 2%, that's just ridiculous.
Well, ultimately,
including Hunter Biden, by the way.
Ultimately, it's not getting through the Senate, but it should be Dan Patrick should bring this to the floor so that we know who votes against it. I think that's the thing, is that everybody who votes against it and votes for it should have their name next to that so that primary voters know who they should be supporting or opposing. And so he shouldn't be holding it back.
I agree with you.
Because it doesn't have the votes. That is not his job. His job is to usher through what the Texas electorate and for him, his primary voters and the grassroots want, and not trying to protect senators from having to take tough votes. Just like the Speaker of the House should not be trying to protect members from taking tough votes.
I have a question. Can anybody tell me how Derek Chauvin made it to trial before the Hardin Street raid and Goins made it to trial? How did Derek Chauvin kill George Floyd after Goins and his cronies murdered the Totals?
Because you have two different state legal
That's obvious.
systems.
I think there's a lot of public pressure, Marcus. This is a national.
Stop one at a time.
I want to understand how this hasn't gone to court and this guy hadn't been put in jail yet.
Go tomorrow.
Because this is Texas and that's Minnesota. And that's exactly why that has not happened. Because one of the things that I've been very disappointed, and I want to see how this goes. Let me explain something to you all. And Marcus, you probably already know this. Goins didn't get a reputation with the Hardy raid. He already had a reputation of what he would terrorize the Black community for decades. And let me explain something to you. He is a member of HPD. He is not HPD. So in order for his mentality to be accepted, there had to be a system that let it go on. So what I expected to happen after this all came out, that he lied on the warrant, that he got it through by going around the other gate, that the people who went in there with him were generally the people who went in there with them before. Because let me tell you all, there are other cases that you all don't even know about where people were shot in the back, sleep in their bed, and these no-knock warrants, and they still, to this day, and these happened over 2 or 3 years ago, it's still crime tape, and the family has been threatened if they go in to see where their loved one died or what the scene looks like to this day. So the systematic corruption that allowed him to get as far as he got is still there. Not
if you ask Fake Art. He denied every bit of it.
If you look, and that's another thing, because Fake Art got his ass out there the day that this happened, and on camera said how proud he was of going, oh, he's a bull, he's a bear, oh, this is the second time he done got shot in the face, oh, and he keeps coming. What the hell? Come on now. And that has not been addressed. It has not been addressed.
It wasn't addressed in Minneapolis either. When you look, the news came out this week that Derek Chauvin had done the exact same thing, basically, to a teenage boy. It held him down on the ground with his knee on his neck for 14 minutes. And the same thing, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. He lost consciousness and he still did the same thing. Fortunately, that young man didn't die. But, the system just continues to protect bad apples. And so I guess there's a lot of bad barrels, maybe.
Chow, you had something to say?
Imagine that in a Democratic state, right? In a state with a Democratic governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, mayors, and city attorneys. Minnesota is 88%.
Yeah, but look, lest you guys forget, this is a national story. There was a lot of pressure to bring accountability and justice to Derek Chauvin. We're focused on a Houston case. In the Houston community, this is really important to us. It hasn't elevated, that movement hasn't elevated to the national.
Because
I agree.
The only difference between the Breonna Taylor case and the total case was that Breonna Taylor was African American. But that whole no-knock warrant, busting down the door, looking for drugs that's not there. It is very similar, and it is right out of what's that movie? Training Day. It is right out of Training Day. I mean, it is amazing how much it matches Training Day. Yes, go ahead.
Let me bring something up that happened this week as well. Council approved millions of tax dollars for legal defenses in various situations. You want to chime in on this, Charles?
Well, yeah, but I wanted to chime in on one other thing first, which was one of my frustrating points about the police reform is that the body camera policy isn't retroactive. So footage from the Tuttle's case and footage that happened just over this past year or 2 years is not going to be included in that 30-day release. And I think that's an issue, maybe not a poison pill or the biggest issue, but it certainly should be included because there's a lot of stuff that has happened that should be released. And I think that the public deserves the right to know about.
I go with Bob on that. I don't understand the 30. I mentioned it before. I don't understand the 30-day thing. You know, when it happens, we need to know, especially if there's a potential of unrest in a particular town. You know, holding that thing for 30 days.
Well, there's probably some lawyers involved, and you know.
Yeah, look, Doug Griffith with HPOU said, and surprised me a little bit, said, we have always been in favor of rapid release of body cams because, you know, the vast majority of officer-involved shootings, our guys are doing it right. The vast majority, and that's what he said. That's what his public statement.
Well, that ain't
camera. Yeah, and so you see the opposite.
But that's not how they do it. They're doing the opposite. Bob is right. They're doing the opposite because you know what you all are not recognizing. Before George Floyd was killed, we had 6 police shootings in Houston. We had not seen the body cameras of any of them. We had 6.
They brought one out.
Yeah, there's been more than one, but they're not.
No. I'm talking about before George Floyd's murder. We had 6 police shootings, and we hadn't seen the body cameras yet of them. They kept saying they had reasons for holding them out and all of this, especially the one that happened off I-10. But I'm saying that, you know, practice what you preach, because I agree. If you got the camera and you innocent, hell, let it out, let them see. But what nobody has said was, think about it. Charles, you live in a house. Child, you live in a house. Marcus, you live in a house. Greg, you live in a house. Bobby, I live in a house. How the hell did they end up at the Tyler's People house? Because if you look at the MO for them, you don't see them on nobody police radar. So how did they end up? Nobody has said, how in the hell did that address get picked? Nobody said anything.
There's some rumors out there that I can't talk about online, but yeah, no, there's a reason why that house was picked, I think. But you look at the Elizabeth City, North Carolina thing. In that situation, it certainly appears that there may have been some police wrongdoing in that shooting, and so now the sheriff says he wants to release the information, but you know the judge won't allow it to be released, and you know, because it's going to complicate the litigation process, and stuff just needs to come out. I'm going to commend the people that have done the protesting in Elizabeth City, though. Yeah. They have locked that down to where they're not letting outsiders in there, and they're keeping it peaceful. In over a week of protests, it wasn't until after the 22nd video was released that there was any arrests even made, because the protests were done effectively and peacefully, and the community leaders in Elizabeth City did a great job on that.
Has anybody noticed that they passed these millions of dollars of legal fees when Tomorrow Bell was out of town?
Oh, that's right. We got off of your topic again that you wanted to talk about.
That's okay. It's okay.
The mayor argued that they have to always have representation for the city, and that's a fiduciary interest of the city to protect itself, and blah, 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 blah. But I also heard that this is a way to get a settlement, that by having the city hire legal counsel and then have that legal counsel discuss with legal, it's a way to expedite settlements. And so,
but I'm going to say that's why they did it, because they got so many pending lawsuits against them. And you
sounds like a conflict of interest to me.
I mean, no, they got some serious lawsuits out pending against them that they gonna lose. Shit. I mean, they gotta do something. Okay, they weren't gonna borrow the money from me. So
which is why somebody flew down south to Miami to get away from the heat.
Hey, look.
Exactly.
What did Bill call it last week? They've got 4 or 5 break the bank lawsuits that they can't afford to lose. Not one of them. Not one of them. Or this city's in huge trouble.
Exactly.
But does the city pay, or does the insurance pay?
But the insurance is only a certain amount, and I'm sure that they're at their cap, because when they got broke, when they claimed they got broke, they cashed in some of their policies.
Yeah, most government entities self-insure.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
In some of the suits that Bill was referencing aren't even just the police suit. I mean, he's talking about like the Prop B lawsuit too. So if they have to pay that, I mean, so it's like a mixture of like weird lawsuits that could just cost the city millions of dollars. Yeah,
which makes me wonder why all these guys are lining up to run for mayor.
You said what?
I mean, it's all going to drop in their lap.
Yeah,
it is. And
there's a lot that's going to drop in the next mayor's lap.
It is. I'm telling you. But Charles, that corruption I told you about at the airport, that I told you with the documentation I had. I mean, that thing is huge. So
go ahead, Marcus. Go ahead, Marcus.
Oh, I tomorrow took my. I want to hear what tomorrow was talking about.
Now, only Charles knows that. Charles knows about that. I mean, that thing is scary. I'm not lying. That is scary. So look, they have wherever they need to get their money from, they need to get it together because they're gonna lose. They're gonna lose.
I'm gonna have to run to get to work.
One of the unfortunate things.
Well, we're at the half hour anyway. It's a good stopping point. Briefly, I want to let Tamara Bell tell us about the icon who was honored this week.
Yes, yesterday I returned from my Uncle Perry A. Smith III. My Uncle Perry was one of the founders of the Freedom Riders and one of the founders of the Progressive National Baptist Convention with Dr. Martin Luther King. He was one of John Lewis's mentors. Uncle Perry went to Prince George's County, Maryland, after he attended Howard at 15 and graduated at 19. And he became a pastor at First Baptist Church of North Brentwood, where he told them at 23, I'm only gonna give y'all 1 year. And he ended up being there 52 years. And at his services on Friday, the mayor, the county judge, former council members, people came up to thank him. Howard University's proclamation didn't leave a dry eye because he was an adjunct professor for over 40 years. And they talked about all of the pastors, I mean, internationally, who had come through his classrooms. Now, mind you, one of his little cousins who's a pastor, he said, I know we in church. I know we got to keep it, short. He said, but I want to keep it real. Uncle Perry pissed off a lot of y'all up in here. He said, I know he did. He said, don't lie. He said he did. He said, but you knew when you came to him, he was going to help you, but he was going to tell you what he thought before he helped you. And so I am so honored to have been to be a part of somebody, what he has partaken into our children, because he would tell them excuses are useless. And if you on time, your ass is late, because Uncle Perry wasn't late for nothing. He was always on time. So I tell you all, if you get a chance, the Washington Post has his obit in there, as well as the story of the fact that truly he was the first Black Klansman. He had joined the Klan in the 60s at the request of a white pastor, because you didn't have pictures on your ID. He said, when they read your bio, they're going to be happy to have you. And when he showed up at the meeting, of course, they said, what the hell you doing here? He said, because I'm carrying a card like the rest of y'all. They closed the door, went inside, and shut down the meeting. And they never had a Klan chapter in Prince George County. And the Washington Post carried that story on Uncle Perry. And he was honored on Oprah Winfrey's last show with the other remaining Freedom Riders. So keep our family in your prayers, a big loss.
All right, rest in peace, Uncle Perry. We're going to leave it there. Everybody, thanks, Facebook crowd, for hanging with us. You know it's value added in overtime.
Yeah.
Have a great week.
Yeah, have a good weekend.
Thank you.